What's up, everybody? So I've got a special guest on today's episode, I guess, of HVAC Millionaire right here on YouTube. And his name is Chris Lollini.
Nailed
Lollini.
it.
And he's got a very unique take, and we might get into a little bit of that, but he helps people increase and enhance their reputation basically online. And he does it through his business, which is called Reputation Igniter. So maybe tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get into the HVAC industry space and all that stuff, Chris?
Sure, that's a great question, Kelly. I appreciate it. So I jokingly tell people I'm a recovering engineer, because that's what all my schooling and professional experience was. And I wanted to get out of that. It was just kind of the same thing, just a different day. And I don't know. I'm more of like a people person, and I would say that amongst engineering people. I've met people, and I'm not one of those people because they're next level. But
Right.
so I found marketing was just something that I was fascinated with for years and years and years. It kind of had some side hustles type stuff. And then I decided to just make an agency of it because I was running across home service providers that there was just such a gap in their knowledge and understanding. And this was back in 2013 when like so many businesses were like strictly offline, and the idea of going online was so confusing for them. And just it was so much like harder for a lot of these old school guys to kind of get online. And so just found a sort of an opportunity to just help serve some of these blue collar workers, just figure that piece out, and be that liaison between like a marketing agency and themselves. And then that morphed into Reputation Igniter, because what I had found through working with a lot of these contractors, like I'm a systems guy, so it's all about lowest common denominator. Like, what's the smallest thing you can do to make the biggest impact, right?
Absolutely.
As much as people love like lighting their money on fire with Google pay-per-click, right? Like I'm sure that there's better ways to do it, and that's what caused me to focus really on helping a business build a reputation online through strategic systems that really, in a way, dissolve into the background of their business and just kind of run on autopilot for them so they can focus on what they love doing, which is serving the customer, delivering great customer service, but making sure they've got the components in it to facilitate, them growing organically. And so like, why HVAC? I think that's another thing is, um, for me, I'm, like I said, engineering background, and then going into marketing and just really finding that I was resonating with a lot of the HVAC, just because it's very technically oriented, but there's also like a lot of innovation here. And it's exciting where our trade is going and what it's doing and how it's helping change people's lives. And global warming or not, right? There's more need for HVAC now than ever before. And so for me, it was just an idea of just really synergy with the people. And I had kind of done that when I was in the Navy, and so that was just sort of a natural fit, I guess. So
Yeah.
long answer to a short question.
No, that's a great answer. So I can relate because I started my business in 2008, and like YouTube was not nearly as popular, so you couldn't
Right?
find information about how to grow your business. And then, of course, the online stuff, when that came onto the scene, it was really new. Like
Yeah.
there was no Google local services. There was no way to build your reputation online at that point. It was just developing, I should say. Or
Yeah.
that's from my perspective. I mean, I was spending all my time like in the field at that time, but still at 2013, that was about the time where I started to at least realize I needed to make a transition to like
Yeah.
start building a business instead of just, running inside the business all the time. So all of that stuff was new. And
Yeah.
I know a lot of people build their business on their reputation and
Yeah.
word of mouth, which is excellent because that's the best type of customer. I always say that, it's better for somebody else to say, "Hey, Chris is awesome," than for Chris to go
Yeah.
around telling everyone how awesome he is. So
Yeah.
instead of just you saying that you're great, other people are saying it too. But then everything switched to online. Like that's how people are finding it. Of course now. And when it comes to the reputation, I feel like I think we briefly touched on this before we hit record, but it's like
Yeah.
when you go to purchase anything, what's one of the first things you do?
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and I'm reading company reviews
Yeah.
or I'm reading reviews about the product because I want to make sure that I'm picking the right product.
Yeah.
And I think because Google has, or not Google necessarily, but Amazon has taught us all about this,
Right.
that
They
now
trained us.
they trained us. Now it's how we shop. You know, we
Yeah.
shop by, we want to make comparisons, make sure we're making the right decision with our money. And so I think it's a natural thing nowadays when people go online and search for your company that they are going to read some reviews and make sure that you are reputable and that you do take care of your customers.
Yeah.
So when it comes to collecting those reviews, um, what have you seen? How when you, I know you help companies collect more reviews. That's one of the
Yeah.
services you provide. And so what kind of impact does that typically mean for the company as their reputation increases or ignites, as you could say?
Yeah. A lot of great questions there. And just, I think a lot of things you shared, I think just kind of like deconstructing that, first
Sure.
and foremost, right, is like, um, so starting off first, right, when because we got to think about this, like, to understand the implications here, because I think the thing that challenges me as a former engineer, right, and even as an entrepreneur, right, is like, how do you put actual numbers to, like, what's the impact of your reputation on your business, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
there's the numbers are amorphous, right? But I think that if you asked any business owner, right, and these are what the polls show, it's like, I think it's like 65, maybe it's like 85% of business owners say that referrals are their number one business source of, like, new business, right? And it goes, and I think every business owner that's probably listening to this is going, yeah, like, that's my main source, right? Like, yes, I pay money to Google. Yes, I pay money to Yelp or Angie or Home Advisor. And let's just not get into the politics of people's feelings towards any of those, because
Right.
I've been there, I've seen all that. But
That's a whole
just think
nother
about yourself as,
episode.
yeah, yeah, right. It's a whole other episode, right? And we probably need, a stiff drink to go along with it. But
Yes.
the a lot of tears probably shed there. Uh, but thinking through, like, okay, let's say, and this is where most people are, especially like our generation, right? Like, so many people have moved. Nobody's staying in the same place anymore. You're in a new place. We don't have that relationship with Aunt Edna who got her roof done, and let's talk about HVAC, but, like, she just got her system repaired or replaced or whatever, right? Like, we don't have Aunt Edna to call up and say, hey, who did that? Right. For you. Right. So instead, what do? Well, in the absence of that, right, and we're just more voyeuristic culture now, is we go online and we Google something. But let's say that we're old school. We actually asked a couple of people's opinions. Maybe it was a coworker, maybe it's our neighbor, right? And just said, hey, who was over yesterday? Right. Well, that's just the beginning, right? You have to hope that you did something good for that client and they were willing to open their mouth and say something nice about you. But let's say they mention your name. Well, what's the customer going to do, right? They didn't hand him a business card. They didn't hand him a flyer. Nobody does that anymore, right? They just told you your business name. What do they do? Well, they just go to the almighty Goog, right? The Google's like 92% of, like, search, right? And so the question is, what do they see? What's the first thing, right? It's not your website. It's your Google business profile, right? And right there is the gateway to your business. At least that's what I share with my customers. Like,
Mhm.
how many reviews do you have and what's your star rating? Right? Or maybe before that, can somebody find you? Right? Like, is your name something that people, and you talk about this a lot, right? It's like, your name has to be catchy, right? If you're just some generic, like, HVAC, DFW, it's like, bro, good luck getting found, right? Like, you're just a bland Google search, right? You have to have something that sticks out so that you can, number one, be found. And by the way, don't freak out if that's the
Yeah,
case. If
if
you
you went the other route, don't worry. Like you're fine for now, but it's something you want to consider in the future.
yeah, and
I
definitely,
changed my company name 9 years into the
yeah.
business. That was scary,
Yeah.
but we wanted to be perceived as a professional company. I wanted to look more professional, I should say. Not that my company wasn't professional already, but I wanted a different image. And
Yeah.
so that's why we changed it, and we were
Well, and I
unique at
think
that point.
you've got some videos on that too, which I think is just, like, understanding, like, the concept behind, like, rebranding, because, like, it's not the kiss of death, right? And to that point, like, yeah, maybe you're in that nine years. Well, if you're in it 9 years and you got 125 reviews, like, you can actually change your business name on Google and it won't like totally destroy you, right? Like you keep the
Yeah.
business profile with all the reviews, you just change and update the name, you do a DBA and all that good stuff. And like it can actually be a pretty clean transition, and it can be super impactful because, yes, it will take time for the search engines to kind of catch up with you, but you're going to be way easier to find, right?
Yeah.
But that being said, right, is if they can't find you because you don't even have your Google business listing, like get that figured out, right? Number two is making sure that you've got enough, I call it like alignment, right? Or corroboration is like, okay, yeah, the neighbor said that you were great, but like, do other people say that you're great? Because if they don't say that you're great, then like that referral's dead on arrival, right? And your competition is just a click away. Like literally just say HVAC contractor DFW, and they have a list that's thousands long that they can go through, right? And so, all things being equal, the data that's presented, and obviously Google thinks it's important because they put it right there, is the number of reviews that you have and the star rating, right? And then they make that next step to maybe visit your website. But to be honest with you, most people aren't even going to the web. Like it's like, I can't remember the stats that I see, but it's like only 40% maybe go to the website. It's like 60% like call, text, chat or whatever, right? So it's like
Straight from the Google
yeah,
listing, right? Yeah.
yeah. I mean, they know they need service, right? And
Yep.
you clearly look good, or you don't look good and they don't call you, right? So that's the biggest thing. I get worried for not my clients all do great after I help them figure this out and build the system out. But like before that, it's like, man, you could be missing a lot of your referrals just because you haven't actively been intentional about that piece. But yeah.
You bet. And I could tell you just from experience that when we started taking reviews seriously, because it was always just like an afterthought, and it was cool if we got one, cool if we didn't.
Yeah.
But then we started, because when it comes, it's not just the owners, us owners out here who are trying to run businesses, also our technicians and our installers and our company advisors. Like we all can be a little hard-headed at times. And for a lack of a better way to put it, like sometimes we have to repeat ourselves. We can't
Yeah.
just say something one time and have it be absorbed and have it be automatically implemented in just to the way we run business.
Yeah.
And so what I found is that I had to constantly communicate, like, we got to ask for reviews. We got to ask for reviews. And it would work for like 15, 20 days. And we might have one good month where we were kind of happy with how many reviews we collected that month. But then what would happen next month? It would
Yep.
just drop off,
Yeah.
completely drop off, because I stopped talking about it. And
Yep.
so once we found some people who would help us automate that process,
Right.
our reviews started really gaining ground. And I could tell you from experience that every single week in business, as these reviews piled up in Google, every single week, we would have customers who would call in and say, well, I wasn't sure who to call, but I read your reviews.
Yeah.
And that's just to prove the point of exactly what you've been saying. Like it matters. And
Yep.
it not only matters with Google, it matters for your customers. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's something that we have to focus on and concentrate on. But I love the idea of automating it. I think it's really important still for a technician to ask, or to
100%.
uh, frame it, I guess, in a way, like, hey, as
Yep.
soon as I close my invoice out, you're going to get an email that shows your receipt. There's also going to be something on there, or however your system delivers it,
Right.
that, is going to ask you for a review. So I just asked that if I did a good job today, please let me know in the review. It makes me look really good at work. And, I'd love for you to be a part of my team. So
Yeah. Of
anytime people want to help other people, and
course.
reviews is one way that the customer gets to help the technician become recognized if they're communicating that. So that's
Yeah.
just one little snippet of like how to ask for reviews. But at the same time, the more automated it is, the more consistent your results. It's kind of like just when you build processes in your system. If you know that if you run a service call a certain way, it
Yeah.
delivers X amount of revenue consistently, then you build a process to make sure that everyone else can adopt the same process in the business. That way, when any technician goes to run it, you get a consistent result. And so I think having an automated review collection system that works is crucial.
Yeah, and I think I love what you're talking about, because like at a baseline, you have to have a system of process in place that is rigid and consistent and will be there rain or shine, whether or not, your technician's kid gets expelled, or, wife is pregnant, or whatever's going on in their
Or you
world, right?
forgot
'Cause
to
like,
talk about it for a month.
yeah, or you forgot to talk about it, right? Like, yeah, let's take some ownership, extreme ownership there.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, like, yes, you still need to kind of hammer that home, and kind of, for lack of a better word, indoctrinate your team into reiterating that. And that can be from, the dispatcher that's taking the call, saying, hey, when somebody mentions like, oh, hey, I read your reviews, right? Giving a nod to that and being like, oh, thank you so much. We really appreciate it when our customers leave those reviews, because what you're doing is you're putting that seed in that customer's mind, like, oh, wow, they appreciate it. They know that it matters. The business owners engage with that, all the way through the technician saying like, hey, just so you know, because like giving them the heads up so that they're looking for it, or they know it's coming, or they know it's important, like reiterating the importance. But at the end of the day, and this is what you kind of asked me earlier, right, is like, what have you seen has been key or important to that, is like, it has to be easy for your customer, right? Like most people,
Yes.
if they're not using, a software to kind of automate this, it's tying directly into their CRM. And even if you're using an old like CRM, like this is where I kind of like pride ourselves on what we do, is like, we'll build out this whole like system to integrate. Like we'll take the invoices that you're emailing out, we'll grab the information out of them, and we'll automate the whole process if you're using something like a little bit more antiquated, like Field Edge or whatever, right? So it doesn't matter. But obviously, if you've got something like Service Titan, like that's an easy kind of plug and play. But those softwares, although they have that feature, it's not necessarily as effective and efficient as it could be. And that's where we usually help a lot of our clients, is just optimizing that from 10 years of screwing this all up and figuring it all out, right?
Yeah.
But making sure that throughout the entire experience, you're asking for that feedback, and they're being let know that it's important. But I forget, I think it's Adam Clear, I think that's his name, in the book Atomic Habits,
Atomic
right? He
Habits. Yeah.
talks about it, right? You don't rise to the level of your goals, but you fall to the
James
level of your
Clear. James
systems.
Clear.
James Clear, that's what it
James
is. Okay,
Clear.
Adam
Yeah.
Adam Grant's the guy, give and take, or give or take, whatever. And
Yeah.
so yeah, you're right, James Clear. But he says that, and I like, man, I love that quote, because it's so true. And so the question is, what system did you build into your business, right? It's just with anything else in your business. What are your systems? What are your processes? What is something that you're continually, consistently doing? And that's an easy component to it. The other thing too, to that point, is like, why I think reviews are such an integral piece. It's like, it's the most controllable thing you have in Google's eyes, right? Because like, yes, SEO, very complicated, very complex, very regionally sensitive, depending on where you're at and what your competitors are doing. But the one thing that you can control and really has an impact on things is your reviews. How many are you getting? Or like, how many do you have? What's your star rating? What is the recency of those reviews? So that's the thing I talk about with my clients all the time, is like, okay, great.
Yeah.
You got 50 reviews. Did you get those 3 years ago, or 3 months ago, or like 3 days ago, right? That's different, or important. And then the last thing is the velocity, right? So like, how many are you getting them, right? Like our goal for our clients is like, you want to be at least getting one, if not a couple, every single week, because that's indicating to Google that like, you're a very active business. People are very happy with you. And so you can notice yourself rising in your visibility. And like you're saying, that's why your phone is ringing more off the hook, is because all of a sudden you're slowly becoming more and more visible. And it kind of goes as an epicenter from right where you're physically located out. And you're just catching more and more of a pool of those people. Screw backlinks, right? Like at the end of the day, the third party validation that you're talking about, right? Like, yeah, you could your dispatcher could answer the phone all the day and tell that person how great you are. But if they heard it from somebody else, it's like, no, that's like truth, as opposed to like, you're a salesperson and I don't want to, kind of thing.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, so your system sends a customized, it
Yep.
customizes the request for a review
Yep.
in a way that, because based off the previous services that they've already done.
Yep.
So that's one way I know that makes your system so unique.
Yeah.
But another thing is something that you said there, I just wanted to touch on because it came up and it's something that I learned. And I don't keep up with Google and the algorithms and all that stuff. It's constantly changing.
Yeah.
But I did learn that when it comes to responding to your reviews, once you get them, is
Yeah.
also something that Google's looking at.
Yep.
And you may be able to touch on this or give some insight into that. But
Yeah.
I know that I heard at one time, and you can correct me if I'm wrong or if somebody told me wrong, but it was like the more customized your response to the review, Google's paying attention to that too. Is that true, or do you know much about that side of it after the
Um,
review has been given?
yeah, so great question. And I guess maybe I'll start here saying like
Yeah,
there's a survey that I reference every single year, and I highly recommend if you're a business owner, I think it's important to just pay attention to the survey. And it's one Bright Local puts it out. It's called the Consumer Review Study, whatever. And so every year they're asking consumers, how are you using reviews, right? Like what's important to you in reviews? Just like don't even believe me, just go read it in the study. You know, I think they like do like it's like 1,000 customers or something like that they go and they call and they, you know, do this whole process and
yeah,
they vote on all these metrics. But one of them is something, and again, I might be getting the stats wrong, but it's uh like 62% of consumers like read the review, like the responses to the reviews, and
yeah,
feel that a business and expect a business owner to respond to every review, and that influences their decision to go and use that business, right? So like
yeah,
if you're not responding, like go respond, and don't be embarrassed about the fact that you haven't responded from reviews 10 years ago. Go and respond anyways, because what happens when you respond is that actually that Google sends an email to that user and says, so-and-so responded to your review. Hey, you want a reactivation campaign? There you go. Go ping everybody
absolutely.
that obviously clearly liked you and remind them that you exist just by being kind enough to respond. And if you want to, you can apologize. Sorry, this is so late, right? Or whatever the case may
Yeah,
be. Um, but yes, the responses do play into Google's overall factor. Now, what percentage? I would probably say the lower, right? So I would say if I was a business owner, I wouldn't even think about worrying about the impact that's having on the SEO or on the Google ranking factor. Now,
yeah,
one thing that we've been doing with our clients a lot is lately is infusing SEO keywords into the responses, right? Because, you know, Google is scraping that and they're looking at it. And from obviously Google doesn't tell me anything, just like they don't tell you anything, right? Is that,
right.
you know, if they're scraping the reviews for ranking reasons, right? They're probably not differentiating between the actual review itself and the response to the review. So like whatever context or information is in there, they're probably categorizing that. And if you're saying, you know, oh, it was so great to come out and do a tune up on your HVAC system, you know, Cindy, we really appreciate it. You know, can't wait to see you next year in 2 years or whatever. You know, thanks for being a member or whatever the case may be. I mean, that's an easy way to do it. Or, you know, we're grateful that you're using, you know, an HVAC company near you that you like, or something along those lines, right? That's an easy
Yeah,
way for you to just put. Again, don't stuff it, right? Don't go
right,
that
right.
way, but just
Yeah,
put one thing in there. Talk about your tune-up. Talk about the install. Talk about the replacement. Talk about the repair. Whatever, right? HVAC and those other keywords are going to be helpful to getting you to move in the right direction, right? Can't hurt. Um,
yeah, absolutely. Using maybe your company name in that too. Like, thanks so much for using Service HQ or whatever your business name
yeah,
is.
yeah,
And yeah,
or just
that's
signing
good
it
advice.
off. Or just signing
Yeah,
it off, right? You
yeah.
know, HVAC or HQ, Service HQ, forget what your name was. Service
Well,
HQ,
yeah, my business sold, but Service HQ, yeah.
right. So
Um,
Service HQ team, right? Or the service, you
yeah,
know, you could say Kelly and the Service HQ team, right? That's how I sign mine off, as Chris and the Reputation Igniter team, right? Because like I want them to
yeah,
know that me as the business owner is signing, but like my whole team cares because I go
yeah,
and I share it with
absolutely,
them, right? So,
absolutely.
and then the last thing I would say there is like you you're training your new potential customer to leave a review for you, right? Like if they're reading your reviews and they're seeing a response to every one of them, like they're excited because they're like, cool, like everybody wants to get a pat on the back, right? If, oh man, if I take 10 seconds and I leave a
Yeah,
review, cool. The owner's going to read. I don't know the owner because I never talked to the owner, but the owner's going to respond to me. Like people feel like, you know, and then that comes out in the referral, right? They go, hey, you guys got to use these guys. You know, I wrote a review and Bob, you know, Bob reached out to me, or Bob responded to me. Or sometimes they'll even say stuff like, oh yeah, no, I know Bob. And you're like, do you really
Right,
know
right.
Bob? And it's like, no, but they think they know you because you responded, right? So
You bet. So you're building rapport when you do that, basically,
100%.
and creating some more of that reciprocity style
Love
influence,
that. Yeah.
persuasion. So which
Hmm.
is so valuable. So
Yeah.
um, so yeah, I think that Bright Local, you said, consumer review study. So I think everybody should go and read that to see
Yeah,
what's
you can
happening.
just type that into Google and
Yeah.
it should pop up right there. And like they said, they've got one. I think they're probably going to start coming out with one. I think it's usually around this time anyways. So
Yeah.
I'm probably coming
Yeah.
out with a new one. I think that's
And when you were giving a few examples there of
yeah.
responding to the reviews, I think I just want to make sure that everybody caught that. Is like, you do not want to go in there and just say, thanks for the review. Thanks
No.
for the review. Thanks for the review. And just be a repeating, like, don't just repeat yourself over and over again. Make it a little bit unique. Or
Yeah.
if you know something personal about, even better, like the Harvey McKay, swim with the sharks without getting eaten. He's famous for like keeping a log of like all this information on his clients, because then he could
Yeah.
personalize his messages. That's where, like, when you write a review, or not a review, but you write an invoice, if you're using a dispatching style software, there's going to be a space in there that's just for your team of
Yeah.
notes that the customer does not see. So every time, like when you learn the dog's name, right?
Yes.
The weenie dog's name is Jeff. The daughter's name is Angie, or whatever. Like, if you can start
Yeah.
collecting these, and you could even use that, like, thanks so much. It was so good to see Jeff again, in your review. You talk about like creating a connection,
Oh,
because we're really in the business of building building a relationship with these customers. And just like you said, like, people are moving, there's a certain amount of customer attrition that's just going to happen, just because people pass away, or they move, or maybe they switch from owning to renting or something. Like, things are
yeah.
happening in people's lives all the time. But I think the more we can create that relationship, they can still continue to refer you, because of your reputation, long
Yeah.
after they've sold their home or even moved away, because they're probably still in some Facebook groups or something from their local area where they used to live.
Yeah.
And it's always a good place to be able to show up again. So,
Well,
um,
and I like what you were saying there too, though. Or one of the things I just wanted to mention, like,
yeah,
because we're talking to business owners, right? Like,
yeah,
when was the last time somebody like said thank you to you as a business owner? Man, like, we have such a thankless job in all of this, right? Like,
yeah.
if you aren't, now don't get me wrong, we all get negative reviews. It's inevitable, right? I jokingly say there are those customers who, even if Jesus Christ himself came down and fixed their HVAC system, they'd be like, 3 stars. And you're like, really? Like, you got to be kidding me. It's
Oh, I never
perfect,
give
right?
anybody
Yeah,
5 stars. I've
yeah, yeah.
had
I
people
never
tell
get
me
anybody.
that
You're like,
before.
yeah, yeah. And you're like, oh, thank you. That's a
Thanks, I guess.
compliment,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But looking at that, and again, like, yes, obviously, the quicker you respond, the better off. But I mean, maybe it's the time where you take that hot cup of coffee on Saturday mornings and you just kind of dig in there, like you said, and it's a way for you to kind of get to know your customers. But like, you go in and you look at their service file, and then you just put something meaningful in there, right? And like,
yeah.
we oftentimes we're just getting bombarded with, fires, and the truck did this, and this component broke on an install that we just had, or whatever the case may be. Like, it just seems like it's nonstop headaches. This is like your one serene time where you actually get people telling you, like, thank you so much. Like, my family was, like, overheating over this crazy summer, and you guys came in and, fixed the system and all that other stuff. Like, come on, you got to relish in those small wins, because if you don't, man, it is just a slog and a grind. And it should be an opportunity of celebration. And then you take the excitement and energy that you have, and then you go pour it into your team, right? Leveraging that review, because like, you realize that Cindy wrote the review, you looked at her file, you goes, oh, Cindy was actually working with our technician, Jeff, right? And now you get to go tell Jeff, instead of it coming from you as the boss, which is employees, right? Like, you're hopefully
Right.
you've got a boss that like gives you kudos, but to have the boss instead be like, hey man, I saw what you did on Cindy's job. She wrote a review. She thought the world of you, man. You're kicking butt out there. Keep it up. Like
Yeah.
now he got something positive from you, but it's more important because it came from Cindy. And he's like, wow, that's really cool that like the customers are recognizing my effort. Then your technicians become more engaged when they're out there in the field because they're like, I mean, yeah, you can give him a $10 spiff for getting the review, but what really matters in that dude's life, because he goes home and, you know, or she goes home, right? And
Yeah.
they're hammered with life, is like they just want an attaboy. They just want a little bit of like, hey, you know what? You're not screwing up in every area of your life, right? Like you got some good stuff going in the right direction. Like
Right.
let's just be honest. That's the state of the world, right? You log on a
Yeah.
Facebook, YouTube, you
No,
think the
you're
whole
totally
thing's on
right, man.
fire.
You're totally right. So I want to unpack just a couple of things you just said right
Yeah.
there, because I look at reviews and, some business owners might not really appreciate this, but think about this. I mean, if you collect a bunch of reviews for the company you work for as a technician or installer or dispatcher, why
Yeah.
wouldn't you save those reviews? Or like I would be saving those, they would be part of my resume. If I ever needed another job and I was like the top leaderboard in my company for reviews,
Mm.
that says a lot about you as a technician.
Yeah.
So I would think about it that way. So yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
This is
can I?
something. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to jump on that. Like
Yeah,
thinking from the technician standpoint, if they're listening, man, every time somebody's mentioning you in a review, like you're saying, get that in your resume, right? And sorry, business owners, right?
yeah, we're
Dude,
sorry.
yeah,
Don't.
this is how you negotiate better pay. Is you
Yes.
say, hey, look, of the last 50 reviews you got, 20 mentioned my name. All right. I think I'm doing a good enough job. I deserve an extra dollar an hour, right? Like but trust me, a business owner will be glad to pay you another dollar an hour if you are generating more reviews for their business, because that is attracting more business through the door. Like, so it's a very symbiotic and virtuous cycle that we go in here. Sorry, Kelly. Like
No, I'm so
that was a
glad you
great.
pointed that out. I'm so glad you pointed that out because it's so true. And but I'm really passionate about this because it's a place like I mean, I feel like I was a pretty good leader in my company.
Yeah.
However, I know that I could have done a lot better job with the appreciation aspect of things. It's not that I
Mm,
didn't appreciate people and I didn't tell them
yeah.
somewhat regularly, but I could have done a way better job. And
Yeah.
so that's something like what is it? Hindsight is 2020. Like
Yep.
I the first 8 months, like after I exited my business, my mind is just like, okay, what could I have done? Like it's naturally just searching for the answers of what
Yeah.
if I was to do it again, what would I
Right.
do differently? And I'm here to tell you guys, anyone listening, that it would have been in the appreciation side. I had a manager that also was, I feel like he was way better than me at appreciation. So it's not like they weren't getting anything, but
Right.
they still got some from me, but I could have done so much better. And
Yeah.
I've learned the more book, because I've probably read, I'm not like probably 100 books since I exited the company, just
Sure.
because I have more time.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
and I'm just fascinated with this stuff. I want to help business owners get better and avoid all the mistakes that I did. And
Yeah.
so that's one of them, is appreciation. It's huge. I could go, we could have a whole episode on that. But
Kelly, sorry, I'm going to piggyback on that because there's one
yeah,
other thing that I totally almost missed, right? Is
yeah,
it's one thing to congratulate or appreciate the person, privately, which I think is always an important piece so that you have that moment, right? But
yeah,
then at your team meeting, why not point it out, right? Because not
yeah.
only does that person like, oh, like shoot, the whole team knows, like that's pretty awesome, right? They feel even more elevated, right? But then you're also seeing the vision for the rest of the team that like, oh man, if I get another Google review, or clearly Google reviews are important to the owner, or just like again, this is how you kind of, because the last thing somebody wants to do is remember, team, ask for those Google reviews. No, 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 no. You need to do this much more subtly and much more nuanced so that people don't feel like, oh, he's going to hit us with the review hammer again, right? Instead,
Right.
you entice them, right? With like, hey, it would really feel good to get an attaboy in front of the team. Or, man, I feel like I've screwed up on a couple jobs lately. Man, it would just be great to get a review. Totally within their control. hope
Yeah.
that little mental nudge causes a little bit of, activation and action there. So that
Yeah.
just kind of came to mind. I was like, man, yeah, that's definitely a great way to do it too.
No, you're right. You're right. We every time we had a review, we read it like
Awesome.
every.
Yeah.
I mean, the very next morning, because we did
Beautiful.
morning huddles, like a 10 or
Yep.
15-minute meeting every single morning where we either trained on something or talked about something happening, and we always, if we had a review, we always read it to the team.
Yeah.
And so, but when it comes to appreciation, so I'll give everyone just like an insight on this is
Yeah.
because that's a form of appreciation.
Yep.
And if we don't appreciate somebody, it's kind of like, and I literally learned this from, um, from seeing like the five love languages.
Ah.
If you're familiar with the five love
Yep.
languages, like different people want to receive like appreciation or love in different ways.
Yeah.
And so let's say if my wife wanted acts of service. Like when I took out the trash to her, that means that I love her, right?
Right.
Well, I can do that all day long, but if her, let's say that wasn't her love language and it was words of affirmation, but I wasn't telling her how much I loved her every day and telling her how much, I enjoy our lives together, well, then it misses the mark.
Yep.
Even though I think I'm doing a great job. Well, there's also some training on this that I facilitate called the five languages of appreciation in the workplace.
Oh, nice.
And it's co-authored. So the original author, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, that wrote the five love languages, partnered with this other guy who is a consultant, a coaching guy who's also ran big businesses.
Yeah.
They came together and formed this training, and it's incredibly impactful and it makes a big difference in your culture. So I'll just leave it at that. But circling back to what you were saying earlier, because this gets everybody at some point, especially when you care so much about the business that you do your best every single
Yeah.
day out there, and you would never try to screw a customer over. You would never try to take advantage of them. Like you do everything within your power, and then you get that negative review.
Yep.
And so I was just going to say, just as a quick like little exercise to kind of make my point is, if I was to say, Chris, I'm going to give you some numbers, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. What numbers are missing?
Oh man. I don't know. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, I guess. Maybe. I don't know. What? Oh,
2, 4, 6, 8,
sorry,
10, 12.
all the odd numbers. You were giving me even numbers. I was like,
Yes,
those are the even
exactly.
numbers.
So you would say, normally someone would say, well, 1, 3, 5, 7, the numbers I didn't list. Well,
Yeah.
the thing is when I first said that, I wasn't saying that I want you to find all the missing numbers. I just said, I'm
Right.
going to give you some numbers.
Yeah.
But our brains say, what's missing? Our brains focus on what's not there. It always focuses on the negative.
Yeah.
And every time I've had some emergency, if you want to call them that, emergency text messages or excuse me, emails from coaching clients, and they're like, oh, I just got this review. What do I do? How do I
Yeah.
respond? I just want to tell her to F off, and I'm
Yeah.
like, wait, slow down. And it's really painful because we care so much and we've done everything in our power to make somebody happy, and sometimes we just can't make them happy. So
Yeah.
um a lot of people say that it's not always great to have a 5-star rating.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like fake because
Right.
and I don't know if there's any truth behind that. I think if you can pull it off and only have 5 stars, then you should by all means do it.
Yeah.
But if you have one or two peppered in there that where things didn't go right or a mistake was made or something, as long as
Yeah.
you did your best to try to correct that mistake with the customer, and you can literally be honest with yourself and say that I did everything I could,
Yep.
then I think it just is what it is at that point. And there's
Yep.
only, what can you do about it if you've done everything within your power to try to reverse that review? But the main thing I want to just say is for the business owners out there and technicians. You know, if you're the one who got the bad review, look at all the good reviews you've collected.
Yeah.
You know, focus on that. Stop focusing on that one mistake that happened in your business. And as long as you did the best you could to make it right with the customer, all you can do is all you can do, is another one of my sayings. And as long as you've done all you can do, it's enough.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think
yeah.
also too, though, you talked about like framing earlier, right? Is like,
Yeah.
I think it's important to reframe those negative reviews, right? Like, because it's, you know, like they jokingly say about motorcycles, it's not a question of if, it's just a question of when you're going to, you know, turn that or put that bike on its side, right? And with negative reviews, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when, right? Now, if you're cutting corners and doing shady things or whatever, like those are going to come, right? But most businesses, like
And
you
you
said,
earned
are
them.
not.
You earned them.
Yeah, you earn
Right.
those, right?
Yeah.
You take your licks and move on and improve, right? But you know, us business owners, like we didn't start business to go around and screw a bunch of people over in our communities, right? Like people know who we are, right? Especially, you know, with our business, right? So like you did your best. Things don't always go as planned. Things happen. Timing is bad, right? When that thing went out or broke or whatever, it just wasn't the best timing for them, right?
Yep.
But I tell my clients, it's like, look, a negative review is actually a golden nugget. And here's why, because people don't really get to see much when you're responding to positive reviews, other than like clearly you care that people are writing reviews, but they really see your true colors in your negative reviews. Because if you're that guy, right? And I know a restaurant, like they made their whole business on this, is like, you know, getting negative reviews, like because they hated Yelp and they wanted negative reviews, and then they would like respond in kind and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's not the best way to start to do most businesses, except for like that one guy who wanted to make his business about that. But the idea is it's actually a golden nugget, because you get to show your true colors to somebody who doesn't have a bad experience or who has a bad experience, right? And in a way, why that's actually more valuable, and the reason why we all go to Amazon, let's be honest, right? We go to Amazon and we don't read all the positive reviews. We go right to the negative. I go, okay, what did they say in the 1 star? Is it based in fact, or is it some delusional, you know, ayahuasca trip that this person took and decided to write a review, right?
Yeah.
But instead, and the other thing I tell clients is like, look, dude, people can click on these people's profiles, and when they go to the profile and it's all 1 stars, like they just kind of realize that's that kind of person and that's their life. So then they just kind of discount the review. But you better have responded, right? And when you respond, it's not like, hey, jackwagon, like you got to pull your head out of your, you know,
Right.
you know, it should be more like, hey, you know, Dorothy, we're so sorry to hear that. Obviously, we aim for everything to be perfect. You know, things do go wrong. We totally take full responsibility. You know, we sent the tech out again, you know, 48 hours later to take a look at it. We replaced it. You know, sorry, it still wasn't up to your liking, but you know, we did our best, and we hope that, you know, you'll take that into consideration. Something, I mean, obviously it's all situationally dependent, but you got to realize, like, your prospective customer, number one, is reading that, right? Number two, if somebody's going to refer you business, they're also looking at how you're handling the negative. Because if I'm about to go refer you to my brother, well, what if things go south, right? Like, how do you treat them when they go south? Like, it's great that when something goes 5 star that you're all peachy about it, but do you turn into a vicious wild animal when things are, you know, 3 stars or less? You know, are you like a werewolf? And so that can give a lot of people peace of mind that that you'll make things right, right? That's all they want to know, is that you'll make, like, dude, everybody has been at the, you know, at the wrong end of a bad service call, right? But do you do the right thing in those situations? And that's a way for you to communicate what you did, how you updated or changed your processes, and that will give people confidence in your business again. And so, like, it also makes people more willing to refer you. And I think, you know, ultimately too, even if you do get 5 stars, well, you're going to get so busy that you're not going to be able to answer your phones, or you're not going to get back to all your voicemails, and you're going to get a negative review because somebody is going to say, like, I called them and they never called me back. It's like, yeah, your voicemail system also breaks, right? And doesn't work too, right? So I see that a lot with my clients, right? It's like all of a sudden they start getting all these great reviews, and then they start getting negative reviews, and they're really confused. And it's like, Well, it's actually because you're so busy now that like you guys aren't getting back to all the estimates or all the jobs or all the whatever, right? And it's like, obviously it's internal systems and you can work through that kind of stuff, but it's
Yeah.
just not a question of if, it's a question of when, right? So
Yeah. I mean, it sooner or later something's going to happen. I hated the days when I came into work and the phone systems went down in the first
yeah,
hour, because
yeah,
I knew I was going to be spending 2 hours on the phone with AT&T, and then we're going to wait because they're going to give me a time window of like 12 to
yep,
5. And then, and then finally they get back and we get our phones. And then of course our computer systems are down at the same time because it was like a
yeah.
digital line and all that good stuff. But, but yeah, I think when it comes to any negative reviews, like, for one, don't respond if you're in an emotional state.
Wait 24 hours. That's what I always tell people.
Yes,
At least 24 hours. Cool yourself down.
100%. And the other thing is that, it's feedback. That's all it is. It's
Yeah.
feedback, and it's one person's perspective of that feedback. So if you did have 150 good 5-star reviews, and you got that one person finally that you just couldn't make happy, or made a mistake, or something they perceived as you not doing a good job, and they leave you a less than perfect review, that's feedback. Um, but we don't have to listen to all feedback, I guess. I mean, of course, I'm not telling you to ignore it or not pay attention
Right.
to it.
No, no, no.
But it's like one of those things. It's like, well, if I get one or two reviews out of every 100 that aren't perfect, okay, that's one deal. But if I'm getting 10 or 15 or 20 reviews out of every 100 that's not perfect, then
Yeah.
something's not right. So
Right.
use that as feedback to, you know, implement some things and to correct the mistakes that are happening in your business so that that stops happening. So it becomes, I guess, more important if you're getting it regularly, or getting it with one specific technician, for instance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's something you could use as you know, a way to give its feedback for them on how they're doing in their job. So
Well, and then I was just thinking about that referability and like tracking it. Like
yeah,
one of the things we do with our system is we can actually track it to the technician, provided that your CRM is, providing that information to us, right? So like
yeah,
you can have that leaderboard of the reviews. You can also pull up per that technician all the reviews that they've gotten, right? So like, yeah, you can get metrics into that. But I think the other kind of piece to that, right, is that's why it's so important to have an automated system in place, because number one, it makes you more referable, because even if the person doesn't leave a review, right, the fact that you asked for feedback and you solicited that review shows them that you're open, you're transparent, you're caring, and you
yeah,
really do want to know how you did, because that will give them confidence. Even if they're not the reviewing type, it will give them confidence to recommend somebody, because they know, hey, you know what, after every job, at least they always ask to make sure that they did stuff right. So even if, my super critical Aunt Edna, goes and uses these guys, like, and she's got a peace of mind that she wants to share, like, it's still good, it'll get caught. I think the other thing is using a system like that. Now you have to make sure that you're intentional about like how you're asking, right? And this is one thing that we've like crafted over the last decade, is just like making it really easy to give a Google review, Facebook review, whatever review site you want to get it on, but also, in transparency, giving them those links, but also giving them like that side door to say, hey, because most people don't want to give you a black eye online. They just want to communicate to you as the business, like, hey, you maybe don't know this is going on because you're the business owner and you're not in the field. But
yeah,
giving them, and we put it as a big red button, contact us directly. And that gives them the opportunity to kind of like fill out just a form. Doesn't stop them from leaving a review, obviously, because that's against terms of service, but it
right,
gives them that off ramp to go and share their experience privately with you. So you get that feedback. And if you're not doing that, you're probably going to end up with a lot of negative reviews, simply because you don't have that channel to communicate to you where maybe you guys are falling short, right? So it's like,
yeah,
that's another really important piece of that, is like, yeah, it's not just about keeping the reviews offline, but it's just like keeping an open line of communication to you as the business owner. Because most people, and that's what, I mean, I've started to see this a lot, especially as these private equity companies are coming in and buying up these HVAC companies, is like,
yeah,
the company itself becomes so disassociated from its customer that like they just get totally blasted in the reviews about like, this company was great when they were a small business owned by, Phil. And, now that
Right.
ever since the PE company took over, they're just so disconnected. Not to say anything bad about PE companies, but like there's just a disconnect that happens. And if you don't have a process or a system in place, like you're not going to catch that feedback before it becomes too detrimental to your business. Right. So
Yeah,
just something to think about
absolutely.
there.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're coming up close to an hour, so I think we'll wrap it up here. This has
No,
been great. I hope that we helped some people out here who watch this. I hope that you'll go talk, reach out to, I'm going to leave in the description of this video, I'm going to leave a way to reach out and contact Chris and to see how he can help you build your online reputation through reviews and his unique system that works really well for people. So hopefully you'll take advantage of that. And but thanks so much for spending some time with me, Chris. It's been I learned a lot. Hopefully we shared enough things that can help other people, and hopefully we'll start taking your reviews a lot more seriously in your business, because it really does. It's a part of your whole package that makes you get found, and it's part of your referral system, so
no,
it's a good way to expand your reach and grow your business. So
no.
yeah,
Awesome.
so
Thanks,
yeah,
Kelly.
thanks,
Appreciate
Chris.
you
It's been
having me
awesome.
on.
You
Yeah,
bet.
and you too, man. I think we get riffing on these things, and it's just there's so many like little nuanced pieces that makes a good business. And I
Chris,
appreciate you and what you're doing for a lot of these guys as well. So
thank you
that you
so
keep
much,
it up
man.
too, man. Appreciate you.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.